Welcome to Sustainable in the City, where Nashville sustainability champions take the spotlight. Join Urban Green Lab and Zero Waste Nashville as we dive deep into the stories of everyday Nashvillians. We'll chat with your neighbors, coworkers, and fellow community members about the small sustainable actions that are making a big impact on Nashville. From reducing waste to planting trees, our guests will share their stories about the benefits, barriers, and motivators behind everyday choices. Tune in and be inspired by the power of individual action. This is Sustainable in the City.
Hey y'all, and welcome to Sustainable in the City. My name is Allie Omens. I am the Zero Waste Program Coordinator for Nashville Waste Services. We are a division of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, and we provide education and outreach to Nashvillians to learn how to reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost their waste.
And I am Karissa Hampton. I am the Sustainable Households Manager with Urban Green Lab. We are a Nashville-based nonprofit that teaches communities to live sustainably. Last episode, we ended with DJ's sustainability tip. He encouraged us to be okay with losing or failing in whatever we're trying. I recently was downtown and my shoe or sandal decided to break off my foot. And if anybody has been downtown and they have had those straps that just seem to break when you least expect it and you don't have a spare pair of flip-flops, I actually was able to drag my feet all the way down to the Dollar General that was super close by and get some super glue. And I was able to fix it on the fly, and it did not ruin my fun. However, on the Uber home, it broke again. And so I just encourage everybody to be fine with failing and trying again and trying different ways to fix things. Allie, how about you?
That's awesome. If your shoe breaks, try to super glue it together. If it breaks again, then I just don't know. What are you going to do next to try to fix your sandal?
Keep trying. Keep trying.
That's all we can ever do, right? Well, I was thinking about this. I would say my experience failing recently, I purchased a bike on Facebook Marketplace probably months ago now. And in the last several months, I have rode that bike. Maybe I could count the amount of times on one hand, maybe 5 times. So that's a little bit of a fail. I did buy a reused bike, or a used bike rather, and I've just not gotten the amount of use out of it that I should. But that tees us up perfectly for a conversation we're having today. Hopefully after this, I'll feel a little more motivated to get out and ride my bike. But if you haven't listened to our last episode, be sure to check that out. And last time we talked about one individual's efforts to pick up litter in his neighborhood and organize people in Nashville to talk about a concept called urbanism. But today we're going to keep on that theme of bringing people together in community, and this time around biking and cycling in Nashville. Over the time that we had Sustainable in the City as a webinar format, we had a few episodes talking about all different sorts of things related to transit, biking, walking, including the Nashville Department of Transportation's traffic calming program, Walk Bike Nashville's work to get more people walking and biking, and NDOT and WeGo's vision for Nashville's future transportation system. Of course, we'll link all these resources in the show notes, but today we're focusing on one person's approach to creating specifically safe cycling spaces for queer Nashvillians to learn about biking in community, gain independence, and have a good time while also taking a sustainable action in riding a bike.
So we want to welcome our special guest, Al Maddox.
Hi, I'm Al. Yeah, I'm the founder of Queer Spokes. It's a cycling group for queer adults in Nashville.
Awesome. And can you share a little bit more about your sustainability journey? How did you get here? A little bit more about you.
Yeah. I was kind of formally introduced to the idea of sustainability, environmental sustainability in high school. I applied to and was accepted to a boarding program my sophomore year of high school that was called the Conserve School. And that was based out of northern Wisconsin, Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. And their entire kind of ethos around learning was inspiring environmental stewardship. And that was definitely done through the kind of process of experiential learning. And when I was moving towards college, I was really kind of chasing a similar learning environment. And I found that in the Rubenstein School for the Environment and Natural Resources at the University of Vermont. and I graduated with a degree in environmental science with a focus in sustainable agriculture. So that's kind of where my educational journey took me in a formalized fashion.
Mm-hmm. And so you didn't really bike as a
Oh,
kid?
no. Oh, no. I started. I didn't even seriously bike when I started Queer Spokes. So Queer Spokes really started off as less of a riding club and more as an opportunity for folks to learn a little bit more how to maintain and repair their own bicycles. I was working at the Oasis Bike Workshop, which teaches 6th to 12th grade students how to refurbish a used bike that has been donated by a community member. And after that process, they get to take home that bike for free, a helmet, lights, lock, and everything that they need to kind of take care of that bike in the future. But so I was hired into that position not knowing anything about bicycle mechanics. And I had just worked in youth development before, and the manager there, the founder of that program, Dan Furbish, was just excited to have me on the team and decided that I could learn on the job, which I did.
Yeah. And so was there like a specific experience or moment that really sparked the idea like, ooh, I'm going to start a bicycle club?
Honestly, it was just kind of like I came up with the name because I thought it was cute and fun. And I was like, also, we already have a program at the Oasis Bike Workshop. And I was just figuring, like people can sign up for that already. So why not have kind of this affinity space that's totally judgment-free, affirming and inclusive, where people don't have to worry about coming into a place that is kind of centered around something that I'm sure a lot of people think of first and foremost as like a wealthy, cis, straight, white man's sport. And it just totally doesn't have to be that way. So it was less of like, oh, I'm going to do this, and more like, hey, I think that there's a need for this.
Yeah, and thinking about the value-driven aspect of what you're talking about, like you identified the space, you identified the need, and said, okay, well, what can be done about it? I think that's a really cool story to share, and really important when we think about all the things that we can do as individuals. Like if we think about what we see the Nashville community needs and then maybe work backwards from there, that can be a really empowering way to go about it.
Yeah. And so you spoke a little bit about the mission of Queer Spokes, but like how does that connect with sustainability?
I guess like the most obvious way that it connects to sustainability is obviously like promoting the use of a human-powered vehicle. And also like I want to include e-bikes into that. Like I feel more comfortable riding my e-bike through traffic, and I feel like that actually makes commuting and being in a town like Nashville where the infrastructure kind of leaves a lot to be desired for bicyclists, that makes me feel like a lot more comfortable. And that is also coming from a place of privilege, saying that I could purchase an e-bike, and I was working at a Trek store when I was able to get in on that deal. But like I also want to include e-bikes into a human-powered vehicle also, because I want to point out that Berkeley did a 2019 study that said that e-bikes are 20 to 35 times more efficient than a fully electric vehicle even. So even like like an e-vehicle, a fully electric vehicle, e-bikes are still 20 to 35 times more efficient. So that's super huge. So obviously like it's connecting to sustainability in that way. But I also kind of think that we're operating in a way that is environmentally sustainable, but also like economically and socially responsible and sustainable in building a community and sharing a base of knowledge. And we're kind of encouraging people to use the resources they already have, or maybe explore the resources in their community in a way that leads them to kind of not have to rely on a bike shop as much, purchasing new parts, paying for the installation of those parts. And we're creating this community that allows people to learn how to make repairs themselves or connect with others who can teach them. We're teaching someone, and it kind of is causing a chain reaction that maybe they're in a position to teach someone else in the future.
So yeah, sustaining the education essentially.
And the independence too, like you said, being able to be kind of self-sufficient in that way. I'm wondering if we can almost not take a step back, but go back to when you said you were learning how to fix bikes on the job. How did you actually do that? Or can you share some experiences of teaching yourself how to fix bikes?
Yeah, so a lot of people tout YouTube as a really good place to go to learn about bicycle mechanics, and I can attest to that personally. And if you find someone that I guess you can really relate to their teaching style through that avenue, it really does help. And I think that finding those resources on YouTube was also super helpful. If somebody like texted me and said, "Hey, this is happening, how do I fix it?" And I can send them a YouTube video with like the exact, like somebody fixing that exact problem. So even if like we're not in a shared space and I'm not teaching them myself, like being able to be like, "Hey, look at this YouTube video that I found." And usually people are able to kind of work off of that. So I learned a lot off of YouTube. I also was kind of trained through that adult workshop that I was describing at Oasis. But that was, again, kind of like a formalized way of learning. But then I also went and got a job as a bike assembler at the Trek store in Cool Springs. So I was kind of learning more about up-to-date technology because obviously the bikes that are being donated from communities are typically ones that people no longer want and are a little bit older or in a state of disrepair themselves. So working at that Trek store, I was kind of able to learn some more about what's newer on the scene and in the industry. So I spent about 6 months doing that.
That's great. Seeking out those resources. And it's funny that you mentioned YouTube. We had an episode with Blake Mueller, who volunteers at the Nashville Repair Fair or the Nashville Public Library Repair Fairs. And he kept touting he called it the College of YouTube.
Yeah.
For similar
YouTube.edu.
Exactly. And shifting us back to Queer Spokes a little bit, what do you enjoy most about leading a group that both kind of what you were just speaking to, it brings together sustainability, queer community building, and cycling physical activity?
Yeah. I think that something that I have been able to enjoy the most is really hearing those stories about people learning something while at Queer Spokes and then being able to share that information. For example, someone recently, I was just teaching, we were on a ride and her tire got a flat and we were just like out by the dam on Percy Priest and we had 10, 11 miles left to go. No. And so luckily I was prepared and we did a little repair right there on the spot. And so through that process, she was learning how to take on and off a tire of your wheel. And a few weeks after that, we were at the Oasis bicycle shop, kind of like repair fair situation where they were asking for donations for used parts. And she was there with somebody who needed a new to them set of tires and was able to help them repair or like do that replacement in that position. And just like hearing about it from both sides and both of those people, like I was able to do this, I was able to solidify that knowledge, and I told someone else about it. And then hearing that person like, "Hey, I learned this new thing," that person was super helpful. And that was really amazing. I think that kind of like hearing those stories and knowing that, you know, that knowledge is going beyond just me or the other people teaching it is very rewarding.
Fantastic. Seeing the ripple effect, a little bit of so much of what we're trying to highlight with Sustainable in the City is the power of individual action and showing that, like, just like you said, that you can do one thing as an individual and that has the ripple effect. You are then impacting the lives around you and the lives around them and all of that. So that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, there's so much power in community building in general. And so how important is that sense of community, I guess, and shared identity in motivating members to embrace sustainable practices?
Yeah, I think specifically in our case, the intersection of queerness and sustainability are kind of connected through a desire to challenge existing systems of both social and environmental injustice. I would say both of which are rooted in the legacies of colonialism that is really imposing these rigid norms and practices through oppression and exploitation. And these norms, including, strict binaries around gender and sexuality, are kind of designed to create control. And I think that we're really experiencing that with the overconsumption that's like pushed on us in society, and kind of obviously like in society we're not inherently asked to be sustainable or rewarded for being sustainable. So kind of like taking that intersection and taking Queer Spokes as a place to kind of imagine alternative futures for ourselves where these norms are challenged. I think that that's a really powerful intersection. And then envisioning a world where resources are shared. And I think that the queer community does a really amazing job of that, and helping one another out and providing mutual aid. And Queer Spokes is also doing that, through that bank of information, as we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sustainability can be definitely show a sense of belonging. It can definitely show that we all are connected in some way, regardless of, our upbringing, our experiences now. I definitely think that sustainability is, a collective effort, whether you're doing individual actions that lead up to a collective effort or the other way around.
And there's a bit there that almost to transition us into the space of emotional safety, you touched on that a little bit, but I'm curious if you could share more with what it means to you to bring people together around, in this case, cycling and building emotional safety, both for people to feel comfortable to ride around in Nashville on maybe less than safe streets, or just to be secure in being able to fix things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can speak to, I think, a little bit about what specifically having like a queer affinity space means to folks as well. And I was speaking a little bit to cycling as an industry is a very cis, straight, white, male dominated space. And I've worked in a few different industries in my career that have kind of always been that way. So especially being a trans person and being sometimes coming into those spaces as a novice and not super feeling respected, or like someone is going to want to teach me, or being forced to work with someone who maybe doesn't understand or doesn't respect my identity. I think offering a space where the first thing is always about your bike or about we're learning that thing. And, you come into a space, you're just like, okay, that's your name. Those are your pronouns. Thanks for coming. Let's take a look at your bike. And that not being an obstacle to being afraid to come into a space, or like not knowing what to expect from the people who are leading a space. I think kind of like establishing that as an emotionally safe space, as you were saying, is a very important aspect to that. But then coming into like building that trust, I think it does. I guess I think it takes a lot. I'm not sure how other people perceive it. I think it takes a lot to kind of trust someone to lead you in the less than safe Nashville roads. But I'm very glad that people are kind of feeling comfortable enough to come on those group rides, trusting the people who are very experienced in road riding, and then being able to kind of pick up on some of those safety cues. And riding in numbers is always so impactful. I think that when I have felt intimidated while riding on a road, it's always been alone. I think in numbers, cars like don't want to mess with you. They're much more tentative to try to pass you in a dangerous way. They're much more tentative to even interact with you. I've had people like go around a block just to avoid like, I guess what is called a peloton. I've never actually used that word in seriousness before, but like a group of cyclists.
That's a group of cyclists?
Yeah. So I knew about that.
Hold on.
Yeah. That's why it's called that, which also doesn't make any sense because obviously on a stationary bike you're alone. That doesn't make any sense.
Just to be clear, this entire time we have been talking about road cycling, not stationary bike cycling.
So I think like being in a group is super impactful and definitely builds confidence in riders to be able to be out on the road in a group before maybe venturing out by yourself. I feel like I kind of lost the plot on the answer, but
you said peloton, and I think
I didn't think
that's all I think about. I think it's also safety in numbers, right?
Yeah.
The idea of it being harder for cars to pass around you if there's a lot of you, and maybe if you could speak more, we try in our episodes to talk about the barriers, benefits, and motivators.
Yeah.
So you mentioned less than safe roads. What are some other barriers to cycling, either specifically for you in queer spokes or just generally when you think about people getting out there and joining a cycling club?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the biggest one is just being able to afford a bike and that kind of like upfront cost. And not having a bike is obviously a barrier to going on a bike ride. But Queer Spokes is not funded in any way, so we don't have the resources or capacity to help folks purchase bikes. We do kind of have the ability to rehome bikes. So I've had an experience where someone was like, hey, I have this bike that I just totally don't use. Do you have somebody who needs it? And being able to be like, yes, I do know someone who needs that. Yeah. And like being able to just kind of get that bike rolling and up to par and get that bike into a new home. We were awarded the 2023 community grant from Quality Bicycle Products. QBP is a wholesaler that many bike shops are familiar with and use. Yeah, so obviously we're getting non-traditional riders on bikes, and I was awarded $4,000 in wholesale pricing. So like if I was just going out there myself and buying all of these things, it would have been $12,000. Wow. But we got multi-tools, locks, lights, helmets, safety vests, to hand out to people just to attempt to lower that cost of entry for folks. So if people are able to get a bike, I can say, hey, don't buy any of those other things. Don't buy any of those accessories. I have everything for you. And being able to make that a little bit easier on folks. But yeah, and then with that kind of unreliable infrastructure in some areas of Nashville, just kind of being able to comfortably navigate those and understanding, in some ways, understanding the laws and then also understanding when those laws were not actually written by people who frequently ride on bicycles and when it's actually just safer for you to not exactly follow those rules. I didn't say that. But kind of like understanding in what ways you are most comfortable or safe on a road and how maybe that is at odds sometimes with the infrastructure that we're given. So I think that that's where people can really benefit from going on a ride with a friend who's very comfortable on a road. And I can also say, like, 1 in every 5 times I ride my bike somewhere, a driver feels super comfortable to yell something at me out of a window, which is just, like, so strange, but also jokes on them, because if they're going in the opposite direction, it just sounds like, and I have no idea what they're saying. So I'm just like, did that guy say something? And usually I don't even end up looking. So it's just like, I hope that that deters them from yelling at the next cyclist who maybe is less confident and can be deterred from somebody screaming at them out a window.
For any of our listeners out there, please do not yell at people on their bike.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope that no one is.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, be kind.
And it's funny too, because when I'm biking, 99% of the time, I'm wearing a safety vest. I have my neon yellow helmet. I have lights on both sides, even if it's daylight. And so I'm doing just about as much as I can, being very vigilant of cars on the road. And still that ends up happening. Somebody slowed down just to yell, "Be safe" at me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm trying. Like, as long as you don't hit me, we're cool. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's also another hurdle, is that drivers are not taught or reminded of what best practice is and thinking of the most vulnerable people on the road, be that pedestrians or cyclists. And if you need a reminder about the laws, Walk Bike Nashville has an entire way. If you just Google bicycle and pedestrian laws Nashville, Walk Bike Nashville's page will come up and you can kind of refresh what's best.
When you go out with your cycling club or group and do you guys go for joy rides? Do you guys go, from point A to point B? How does that work?
Yeah, a lot of different people have different preferences about what rides they do join in on. So we try to offer a few different options. The biggest issue, if you don't want to load up your bike and drive far out of the city, the longest ride that you can really do on a carless area is about 22 miles from the nature center, Shelby Nature Center, out to the dam and back. And that is a completely car-free ride. But that's just about the only one that you can do. So it gets a little bit boring for people who don't want to be riding on roads, but we try to offer that a few times a year. And then other rides are typically around the 10 to 15 mile mark and are predominantly streets with bicycle lanes or residential streets that do not have heavy car traffic. So those are kind of where we put our emphasis and give options that can please the most amount of people. A bike ride that we did that was a little bit of a personal challenge because we were on a little bit of less safe roads was that we went from the Cornelia Fort Air Park to the pretty new Opryland Mall Olive Garden. And they have a bike rack, which is great. They have a bike rack in front of their Olive Garden. And it was really nice. And we had to go through like at least 2 really scary intersections. And we were completely fine and everyone felt really safe, which I was happy about. But like as a facilitator, I was like, wow, I hope I'm not scaring anyone. But we were super confident. We also, my partner was actually in their van behind us, kind of as a caboose for the scarier section of it. So they were like intentionally, obviously not passing us and kind of holding up cars behind us. And if anyone saw that happening or was involved in the traffic jam that we may have caused, I'm sorry. But we had a very, very positive experience at the Opry Mills Olive Garden. Great staff, really solid hospitality, great people.
So a barrier could possibly be like not having like a bike rack on the back of your car, or not having like storage when you're not, riding your bike. Yeah. I know that my daughter constantly wants to ride her bike, at the park. If I'm going to the park to walk, she wants to bring her bike. Now that she has a bigger bike, doesn't fit in the back of the car.
Exactly.
And so that has really been an obstacle for us. So I was just wondering, how are people getting to these places or these meetups where you guys are?
Some people have bike racks on their car. Other people, I do try to spend some time teaching them how to take the front wheel off of their bike and then reinstall it safely. So that can definitely make it a little bit easier to fit a bike in the back of your car if you have, I guess, something that, like not a sedan, something that can, the seats can go down and you can have a little bit of extra space. But again, that's another issue. One thing that I can highlight, and I feel like not enough people I know are taking the bus around here, but all of the WeGo buses have the racks on the front, space for 2 bikes. It was kind of intimidating to me at first because I have never tried because I'm worried about holding up a bus full of people while I struggle to get my bike on the bus. But you walk up to it and they have written instructions, like grab this first, pull it down, lift this up. And it is very easy to do once you are standing in front of it. And WeGo is usually present at any open streets event. Or if you go to their office, I'm pretty sure that if you just ask someone for a bit of an orientation, they will help you do that on a bus that is not running. So that is a really good opportunity as well.
One of the many reasons why I probably haven't used the bike that I have for so long is that where I live, I have to cross many kind of less than safe roads to get to maybe a bus stop or the next area that might be a little safer to ride on. So I think about that, at least speaking from my personal experience, as a barrier where I might want to, for me, biking and cycling, I would ideally like to use it for utility, to actually get from one place to another, to do my errands, to go out, maybe not as opposed to, but in addition to something like a cycling group where I'm doing it for fun. Does that make sense? Or going out on, Karissa, you kind of mentioned earlier, maybe a joyride of just riding around, seeing the scenery. So, yeah, lots of different reasons that people might bike or cycle.
What challenges have you encountered or do you expect to encounter in creating a safe, accessible bicycle club in Nashville?
Yeah, I think that a lot of those points I touched on with just the infrastructure in Nashville and it being a little intimidating to get started. but also I am the founder, and like I said, we're not funded in any way, so this is kind of like a fun project. And, sometimes life gets in the way and I let some administrative things fall by the wayside, or I'm not on top of creating or promoting programming as quickly as I would like to. But we did, at the beginning of this year, we had a bit of a strategic planning meeting with some of the folks who are our most frequent attendees, and kind of saying just like, what did you like about this past year? What are you looking forward to this next year? What are your priorities? What do you want out of this group? After that, we made a group chat, and just being able to say like, hey, like I know these people are super interested in what are the dates that work for you this year, or this month rather, and being able to like kind of narrow down some of those things in a group before it's a little bit less daunting to try to just like pick dates and wonder who's going to show up. Mm-hmm. If there's like people who are like, I'll be there if it's on this date or this time. Right. I think that that's super helpful.
About how many people are you seeing like
it is
average ride?
Totally random. But I would say probably our biggest ride was maybe just about a year ago now. I think we had 14 people going out to the lake and back for a swim, which was really great. And we actually had some people meet us there who are friends who aren't interested in cycling but really wanted to meet us there and like bring snacks and books and blankets, and so we could all sit out and we didn't have to carry those things on our bikes, water refills. So all of that was super great to kind of have like that supported group ride, especially when it was super hot, August in Nashville. But yeah, that's kind of where things can go back and forth. And when we have shifted from offering our open shops at Oasis to now typically at Green Fleet on Jefferson, as I was talking about. And some people, I would say probably around like 12 to 15 people have been able to come at any given point, even if they don't have a bike. Just being able to show up and be in community and share that space, catch up with people is always super great as well. Another really great group is Music City Dope Peddlers. They have city rides that always have like a really great population, like a super great turnout, and just a really big group that usually starts, I think, around 6, and they have you bring lights, and it's fun to kind of, watch the sun go down, and then you're kind of, in downtown Nashville at night on a bike. Is a very unique experience. One of my favorite things to do, and it is not a lot of other people's favorite things to do, is ride down Broadway on my bike. I think it's quite the sight. I think it's super fun. I have a great time out all the time. I guess I can also shout out that Music City Dope Peddlers always has safety marshals. So they're always, they're like people dedicated to being the most car mindful and blocking intersections, especially while a big group is going through, to make sure that everyone makes it through before traffic starts going again. And they're really supportive and great. Like I said, too, Walk Bike Nashville is a really great opportunity to get in on their events page. They do a good job at documenting all of the workshops around town or the rides. Middle Tennessee Cycling is also a website that documents all of the rides in Middle Tennessee.
I believe Walk Bike Nashville also has a list of bicycle clubs in Nashville. So you should check to make sure that y'all are on it. But hopefully that's also a resource that people can use to find other bike clubs in Nashville.
Absolutely.
And so, Al, can you end us on a sustainability tip? What would be your sustainability tip or trick for listeners?
A tip that I have is that if you are looking to kind of like just start getting out by yourself, and maybe you want to do an errand or something close by your house that you can just kind of test the waters, on Google Maps, if you look at their satellite, default terrain options, they have a filter for biking, and they have a thick green line on roads that have a bike lane and a dashed line on roads that are kind of lower trafficked by cars. So if you want to use that as a way to start kind of getting an idea of what the best roads to bike on are, that is a really great way to find out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I had no idea that was a filter, so I'm going to have to check that out as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Al, so much for being here today. This conversation has been so insightful on how we can get more people feeling safe on our Nashville roads, biking.
And hopefully get some more people starting some cycle clubs, some bike clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always say, if you want something to exist, you can literally just make an Instagram page, and then it does. And then it exists. And people will find you somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully they can find you now that you've been out here.
At queerspokes.bc.
We will link that in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Sustainable in the City. We release episodes on the third Tuesday of every month. If you have any guest recommendations for us or want to reach out and drop us a comment or anything like that, you can email us at sitcnashville@gmail.com. And I also want to give a quick shout out to folks like the Nashville Department of Transportation, Walk Bike Nashville, WeGo, all of the many community organizations and division of Metro government that are working to make our roads more and more sustainable. But until then, get out on your bike, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Sustainable in the City. Sustainable in the City is produced by Urban Green Lab and Zero Waste Nashville, a division of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, with recording assistance provided by the Nashville Public Library's Studio NPL team. Our theme song is produced by Draped Apes. Subscribe in all the places you listen to podcasts. To learn how to reduce your waste, find Zero Waste Nashville online at zerowaste.nashville.gov. For more tips on how to live sustainably, follow Urban Green Lab on social media at Urban Green Lab or online at urbangreenlab.org. Join us next time for more stories about small sustainable actions that are making a big impact on Nashville.